John asked me that if I believed his daughter was in grave danger, would I be willing to kill Christina Parcell for $5,000? I believe that what I've done is the right thing, and I believe that I did it for the right reason. Would be safe. Would be safe from the sexual abuse that her mother was perpetrating on her. And there is proof to that the state is hiding from you.
Your Honor, instructed to be quiet.
This testimony unbelievable or what? Today, defendant Zachary Hughes is getting ready to be cross-examined this morning. This after he implicated the victim's ex, leading to his arrest. We've got a first look at John Mello's bond hearing. Plus, we have a major development in the case of 3 Michigan children abandoned for years. What we're learning about their mother and how she allegedly hid them. Also this hour, shaking, glaring, and laughing. We're reading between the lines, examining the body language at Karen Reed's last court hearing. Plus, everything we know about Monica Cementilli's co-defendant, Robert Baker. This guy's a racquetball coach, a criminal, and a former porn star. We're looking ahead to his testimony that could happen today. It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Thursday morning to you. Welcome to Opening Statements. I'm your host, Julie Grant. Are you ready for some coffee and some court? That's the question. That's what we do every weekday morning, getting you all ready for the big Court TV Live day ahead. So let's get it going as we always do. Grab your coffee right now. It's time for my opening statement. You know, sometimes there are no words. Sometimes what we see in criminal court is so stunning and so sickening, we struggle to find the appropriate words to even talk about it. And I'm feeling this way about the child abuse case in Michigan, where a mother is accused of leaving her children alone in a house of revolting, biohazardous conditions for years. That's right, alone in filth and squalor for years. Minor children. Children who deserved to be loved. Children who deserve to be protected. They had to sleep on pizza boxes. They had trouble walking because their toenails were so long. And when they were rescued, they didn't understand how to brush their teeth or how to flush the toilet. How did this happen, you wonder? The answer boils my blood. Fear. Investigators say that this mother put her kids that she abandoned in so much fear that they were afraid of what she would do to them if they left that filthy house. When I heard this, oh, I found my words. This rotten, sorry excuse for a mother who allegedly abused her children so severely needs to have some fear put into her. She needs to be in fear of never seeing the light of day. Anybody who abandons their kids and forces them to live in filth deserves the harshest penalty the law allows. You know, it's cases like this one, my friends, that make me wish we had eye for an eye punishment. I pray that those kids can heal from their trauma. I pray that they'll now be placed in a loving home. And I pray that somebody throws away the key after the person or persons responsible, in this case, are locked up for life. That's my opening statement. Let me know if you like it. Right now, it's time for your daily docket.
Not only was the defendant having an affair with Baker, but they were also swinging with other people. Her older daughter, Jessica, who you'll hear from, found Baker sleeping in the defendant's bed.
The state's case is resuming today in the celebrity hairstylist murder trial for Monica Cementilli. This is a wild one. It's going to begin at noon Eastern. And in Texas, we've got a new trial we're tracking for you, the sleepwalking twin murder trial. That's what we're calling this one. The accused is Benjamin Elliott. And this guy is being accused of fatally stabbing his twin sister while he claims he was sleepwalking. Now, in South Carolina, we've got defendant Zachary Hughes in the Rose Petal murder trial back on the stand today to face cross-examination. And that, of course, is our top story for you. Brand new overnight. We want to show you our first look at the victim's ex, John Mello. He went before a judge this after he was arrested on Wednesday. So Zachary Hughes, his good buddy, maybe not anymore after this, testified that Mello, who's the father of Christina Parcells' child, offered him money twice to murder Christina, which Hughes said that he rejected.
What John asked you to do?
Yes. Given his concerns, John asked me that if I believed his daughter was in grave danger, would I be willing to kill Christina Parcells for $5,000?
What did you say when he asked you that?
I was shocked and insulted by the request, and I gave him an immediate and unequivocal no.
Then a short time later, John Mello was arrested. This was big breaking news on Wednesday. He's facing charges of accessory before the fact to a felony and solicitation to commit that felony. At a hearing last night, the judge ordered him to be held without bond.
Based on the nature of these charges and the situation involved in these cases, this case, I am going to no bond you, and I'm going to send you to the circuit court for a bond hearing. Your next court date will be sometime in the next 30 days. I can't tell you if it'll be 3 days from now or 30 days from now, because that'll have to be scheduled by the solicitor's office. But at that point in time, it'll be up to them to decide as to whether to grant you a bond or to keep you in jail until your court date. Do you have any questions?
I don't think so, thank you.
So I guess that testimony from Mr. Hughes tipped the scales, as I like to say, with Mr. Mello. So we'll continue following his case. But back to Mr. Hughes. We've got to back the truck up a bit, because what we saw yesterday was quite frankly stunning. This is a guy who's admitting to a premeditated murder and just wanting the jury to walk him because he's saying he did it for the right reasons. Let's bring in our guests now. Attorneys Michael J. Brown and John Phillips on the show this morning. I can't wait to hear what you guys think of this. John Phillips, your thoughts, please.
Goodness, in just preparing for this morning, I was like, this can't be right. And then I'd watch some video. I was like, this is wild, even for court TV, even for South Carolina. No offense, South Carolina, but you have it all. You've got murder for hire. You've got rose petals, you've got musicians, but when you boil it down, the kind of hinge factor and cringe factor are the allegations of sexual abuse, and that's going to justify the murder for hire, and yet it's not supposed to come in, but it keeps coming in, and we're headed towards mistrial. But that's kind of what's on the docket for today.
You're exactly right, John. I've got a clip of that. Let's take a look together.
I felt the most enormous wave of relief wash over me, because I knew from that moment on would be safe. Would be safe from the sexual abuse that her mother was perpetrating on her. And there is proof to that the state is hiding from you.
Instruct him to be quiet.
Okay, you need to stop talking.
So instead of going the route of, I don't know, call the police, no, this guy just says he wants to do the murder and be the hero. Michael J. Brown, I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Good morning, Julie. Good morning, John. The concern I have is the judge's ruling. You don't have to like the defense. You don't have to agree with the defense, but the defendant has an absolute right to assert this defense. And the law says, hey, you can take somebody's life if you think somebody else's life is in imminent danger or harm. So now we're left with a really incomplete narrative. The defendant's not allowed to expand on what he had in his mind and why he did what he did based on the judge's ruling. And along those lines, the prosecutor, they made this motion in limine. They think they're being cute, and they think they're succeeding by making that motion. At the end of the day, quite frankly, I think it's going to come back because you've prevented this defendant from asserting a defense.
I love your analysis, Michael. And I'm in agreement with you because it boils my blood what Christina Parcell is said to have done, what Mr. Post, her fiance, is accused of doing. He's going on trial soon for that. It boils my blood. You were right. The jury should hear this. Okay, so let's say, for the sake of our analysis, the jury does hear it. Let's say things are different. John Phillips, does the defense then still put this guy up? I mean, I know it's his choice ultimately, but our expression in the courthouse, does he still take the stand and posture the way he's posturing here, like he's the big hero?
His testimony is a bit odd to me, in just the way he presents it. People say the truth is contemporaneous, and yet you have a lot of time to set that truth. And so what I don't know is, does he believe this? Is it true, or is this his story? And I don't know which one, but I worry about kind of jury nullification, where a jury is going to say, okay, I'm going to ignore that this was a murder for hire and that he took the law into his own hands to murder because he deserved, the mom deserved to be killed. Like, that's not where we need to head in legal jurisprudence, even though we'd all, want everybody who does that to be thrown under the jail.
Right, and thank you so much for that explainer, John. You're spot on. That's exactly what Zachary Hughes wants. He wants this jury to say, yeah, you know what, we're just going to ignore the law because these are bad people based on your testimony, and we're going to believe you and let you walk away and go back to your piano. Michael J. Brown, if you could get your wish, let's say you're repping this guy and the judge says, you know what, we're going to go ahead and allow all this bad information in, then what do you think happens? What becomes the defense strategy?
Well, if he's allowed to expand on this and he's allowed to discuss the fact or the allegations that the mother and the boyfriend are abusing this young girl, that they're using her in sex acts, and they quite frankly think that her life is in danger, well, he would be able to expand on that. And the jury is the fact finder. Let's remember that. Although the judge is the gatekeeper of evidence, the jury is ultimately the fact finder. And they're the ones who will determine if it's a valid claim or not. They're not even allowed to get to that point because of the judge's ruling. And from my standpoint, I think that's troubling.
You guys are the best. I tell you what, this was such an illuminating conversation. You both have me thinking about how imminent that danger was. That's something we can think about as we get into the cross today. Going to be key in what this jury does with this guy. I can't believe what we saw yesterday, but it happened. He's admitting to murder, admitting to premeditated murder, and acting like he's proud of it. I'm so happy we have you both sticking around. John Phillips, Michael J. Brown, stand by. We're going to hit a break. When we return, here's what we have on opening statements.
Police had to repeatedly advise the children that they were there to help and they were safe. The children's bodies and clothing were covered in feces, and the girls had difficulty physically walking outside of the residence.
We're getting a first look at the mom arrested after abandoning her children for years, several years. Yeah, this is mom's mugshot right there. It was a house of horrors. We'll talk about it. Plus, we're analyzing the body language of defendant Karen Reed and the key players in her case after the big bombshells earlier this week.
Grieving widow or mastermind behind a murder.
Monica Cementelli is accused of plotting to kill her husband.
Famed celebrity hairstylist Fabio Cementelli.
Prosecutors say she and her lover killed Fabio to collect a big life insurance policy.
The defense may say she's a bad woman, but she wouldn't be involved in a murder.
It's a whodunit Hollywood story, but will there be a twist that no one sees?
The Celebrity Stylist murder trial, today, only on Court TV.
That's going to be a very long process to figure this all out, not just how they are both mentally and physically, but how did this ever happen, to have these kids fall through the cracks on so many levels with relatives, the community, and with schools.
Now for what's trending in true crime, stunning new developments in the case of 3 Michigan children abandoned by their mother, police say, and left to fend for themselves for years. Look at this. We now got mom's mugshot. This is 34-year-old Kelly Bryant. She is the accused, waking up behind bars this morning, accused of 3 counts of first-degree child abuse, looking at life in prison if she is convicted. Officers found the children, siblings ages 15, 13, and 12, an older boy and 2 younger girls, when the landlord asked for a welfare check. Look at these pictures. So the landlord called attention to the police for the welfare check because Bryant stopped paying her rent in October.
The defendant instructed the kids that they were not to answer the door or leave the house. All 3 children expressed fear about what their mother's response would be if they left the home. Defendant concealed the children from family and friends and lied about who was caring for the kids and their whereabouts.
It's believed that the children had been living like that for 4 years. Can you imagine not being allowed to leave the house? The mother allegedly put fear in them, fear, if they would have left that house, of what would have happened to them. So now we're wondering, what's mom's defense going to be? Let's talk about it. Let's bring in our legal eagles. Still with me, attorneys John Phillips and Michael J. Brown. Want to welcome into the conversation private investigator, former law enforcement officer, and military serviceman Manuel Gomez. Manuel, let me start with you. Your reaction to this case, and what do you think the defense for mom may be at trial?
Well, in this case, morally, there is plenty of responsibility to go around for how this happened. First of all, the system failed on so many levels. One of the levels that really disturbed me, in 2022, she went to court with her 4th baby's father, and she turned around and he was petitioning for visitation. She told in court that she cannot support herself, she can't support the kids, she's not capable. And at that point, they should have ordered a wellness check. Nothing was done. And besides that, okay, Board of Ed should have sent a truant officer. These kids were in school during the duration they lived at this residence. And the fact of the matter is, the Board of Ed dropped the ball. Nobody sent anybody. Now, the mother could say they were transferred to another school. But the fact of the matter is, you would have to transfer the educational records. Nothing was ever transferred. There's so many levels here. And I can't see an insanity defense on this case because she was paying the utilities, paying the rent. She knew exactly what she was doing. This woman was capable and culpable.
Oh.
There's no doubt that she's going to be found guilty.
Boom. Drop the mic right there. Capable and culpable. That ought to be the prosecutor's theme, Manuel. Thank you for that. Michael J. Brown, let me go to you next, please. What defense might this lady possibly have?
Obviously, the facts are very disturbing, Julie. The only thing that comes to mind is somebody like this with these set of facts. I certainly would want to get a psychiatrist, a psychologist involved. If there's any hint whatsoever of any type of mental disease, trauma, PTSD from maybe her upbringing or even her relationships, I don't know. But that's the initial thing that comes to my mind in terms of what I would want to explore. Really, that's the only thing that comes to mind.
Sure. No, but appreciate that, because everybody's asking, well, what in the world are we going to see from this woman after we understand, based on what law enforcement has said, that this was an abandonment, but she still kept eyes on them, forcing them to stay there. That's really, I think, what's most stunning. It's just like, okay, so there was power and control exerted on these kids, according to police. John Phillips, I know you got a lot of thoughts. Please.
And that's the sign of culpability and conscious decision to do this. One of the things said that she actually had Febreze delivered to the house with some garbage bags so that they could just, spray it to make it smell better. And that the little boy, like once or twice, wanted to go outside just to touch the grass. And as a father of a 13-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 7-year-old, if 4 hours go by, I miss them. If 4 days go by because I'm out of town in trial, I'm on the phone. I can't be away from them. 4 years, like there's a place in hell for that. Excuse my language. Like
yes,
preach. This is
say it, John.
This is awful, and just the squalor and knowing that it's not going to end with the criminal justice system, because these kids will be damaged for life. And kudos to the sheriff. I know they're raising money and clothes for these kids. If anybody out there has a clothing store, some teenage preteen clothes, like get in touch with the Oakland Sheriff's Office. It's awful. Yes,
no, it really is. You hope people see this. I know hearts are breaking all around the country with this news. I mean, just topping the headlines everywhere you look. People are talking about. I've been getting so many calls and messages about this one. This is a bad case, and thank you for that, John. Let's turn now to another aspect of it, and that pertains to where the kids will live next. So at this very moment, they're in the care of relatives, and according to the sheriff, they didn't know what was even happening. Take a look.
Family is asking, apparently, some of the folks that are now involved with the kids that didn't know, that's another question we've asked, they didn't know what was going on with the kids. They had been told by her that somebody else was babysitting the children or other kinds of things. So they were unaware what was happening so far, according to our investigation.
So what about other people who maybe knew something? Manuel Gomez, I want to go to you on this one. Red flags maybe should have been spotted. What do you think?
Well, you know what? It's correct when it talks about the family. It's been 5 years, almost 5 years those kids were missing. How do you not say, where are your children? And if you're saying, well, they're visiting, they're being taken care of by somebody else, you don't go to see them? Come on. What kind of family is that? Just like my colleague said, if my kid is missing for 4 hours, I miss them. 4 days, a day I miss them. The family didn't miss these kids. And the fact that they were put into the custody of the family is egregious. It is disgusting, because these kids need psychological help. Julie, they had a functional cell phone, and they were not able to call 911. You're telling me those kids don't need psychological help? That the family's going to provide psychological help, that did not look for them, that did not file a report? I'm sorry.
You're absolutely right. I mean, they need to go back to basics, learn the basic ways to live. They were deprived of soap, for crying out loud, and adequate food. John Phillips, to you next, please. Your thoughts on whether they should be with a family.
Well, again, it's the family that left them behind. And I saw something about the father being in jail and maybe coming out of jail. But the intensive treatment and also, taking it to another level, you're talking about a 15-year-old boy, a 13-year-old girl, and a 12-year-old girl. Guess what? Preteens, pubescent, I can't even imagine. They had no parenting, no guidance. This is something that a family would want to take them in. But then if you have other kids around, you've got to reprogram them for a while. And no child is a lost cause, and we're going to, I hope society gets this right and enforces this, but there's so much liability to go around. I don't know where you start.
No, exactly. And thank you for all of that. This is a great discussion. We're going to continue talking about this case as it progresses and as Mom works her way through the criminal justice system. John Phillips, I know we got to say goodbye to you. Big thanks for being on the program every Thursday morning. We'll see you next week. Michael and Manuel are coming with us. Please do the same. Here's what's still to come on opening statements. We're breaking down the body language of Judge Beverly Cannone during the most recent hearing, when she was shaking on the bench after a big bombshell dropped by the prosecution. Plus, we've got testimony resuming in the murder trial for Monica Cementilli. We know she's a cheater, but the question is she a killer? We're talking about her mysterious lover, former porn star Robert Baker.
Those are dog fights.
That's not trial by ambush. That's getting duped.
The Commonwealth just provided the court with information that causes me grave concern.
Welcome back to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts and Karen Reed's defense team are getting ready for what could be a hugely consequential hearing next week. We should hear more about Judge Beverly Cannone's grave concern and what it means for the defense team moving toward the retrial. People are still talking about Tuesday's hearing because of the big bombshells. And so this morning we're bringing in two great guests to help us read between the lines of what happened. Human behavior expert Susan Constantine joins us now to talk about the body language we saw in the hearing. Susan, good morning to you. Let's get right to the clip that has everybody talking. Judge Cannone. Judge Cannone, let's take a look. This is after the big bombshell was dropped about the prosecution saying the defense misrepresented to the court, essentially, communications that they had with the ARCA witnesses. Let's take a look.
So I'll see you a week from today at 11 o'clock in the morning. You can tell me now if that is impossible for you. And where Mr. Brennan, where the federal authorities have been kind enough in the past to allow me to have copies of everything, would you be kind enough to call over there or check with whomever you were dealing with to see if I can, in fact, get a copy of everything that you just read?
Susan, what do you see there?
Yeah, so you have to tie things together. She said she had grave concern. When she did that, she leaned back, she tucked her chin in, and then we saw the shaking, right? So this is fear. She had a fight or flight response from the situation. So that was called situational anxiety. And that's what she was experiencing. You can rule out medical, you can rule out neurological, because it actually tied into the content of what she was saying and the situation.
Wow. So fair to say she had a visceral reaction to this.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow.
Exactly.
Susan, I want to show you the next clip. This one is Karen Reed. Let's take a look.
There is a difference between ARCA, and we'll discuss that in more detail when we get to the ARCA motion, and expert discovery. I would reduce it to writing, and I would provide it to them. They have all the materials our experts relied upon. They have all of the reports.
Okay, Susan, anything you're picking up on there?
Okay, so right there, let's kind of go back. There's another piece that probably didn't show there, but there was his glaring eyes. You know, she's known for her stink eye. You know, she looks off to the side and there's this glare, and that is a form of hostility. She's very fierce, right? There's anger, and she disapproves what she's hearing. So we see this a lot in her face, in her eyes, and also a lot of times she'll pull in her lips and her eyebrows will come down in anger and fierceness. So again, for her, this glaring eyes, that's what I see.
Susan, thank you. Next one, Peggy O'Keefe, the mother of victim John O'Keefe. Peggy is a victim in all of this, just like all of John's family members who were there for every single hearing. Let's take a look at her sitting behind where Hank Brennan was at the podium and watch her reaction together.
And then he comments, if you don't want me to say this, that's fine. That's fine. Shh. Don't tell them. Have you qualified as an expert in court before? Yes. I realized my testimony, I said it, and then a bill from ARCA to the defense for $23,925. That's not Trimble. That's not trial by ambush. That's getting duped.
Susan, tell us what you see.
You know, it's really interesting you use the word getting duped, because that's what we actually saw on her face. That's a form of contempt. You might have seen the corner of her eye kind of shrug right over to the side. That's contempt. That's moral superiority. But also, too, kind of that little laughter. That's a mocking laughter. That's an aha moment. And you can actually see that the response, too, in her shoulder shrug. And then once she's kind of realized that, of course, she's kind of into this thinking mode. So you can actually see the movie kind of playing out right there on her face.
Susan, last one for you, please. Alan Jackson, let's take a look at this moment. Okay, it's not a moment where we have a sound. We're just going to play the video. So here, Hank Brennan is talking, and this is where he's dropping the bombshells. I mean, Hank Brennan, wow, I mean, dropped major bombshells, as you know, Susan. And while one of the big ones was being dropped, we see him writing a lot here, and a couple people commented and said that they thought his face looked a little red. What do you think?
Sure. So what happens is when you are having physiological response, it could be fight or flight, could be embarrassment, it could be anxiety, anger, and then the blood rushes to the little blood vessels, and that's why you see the dilation, that's why you see the flushing, you see it in the cheeks, the neck, and the ears, and that's what I'm seeing right here.
Boy, Susan, thank you so much for all of this great analysis from you. As always, we'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
Now let's turn to what comes next in this case, because there's a big hearing coming up that can have big consequences. This is gravely serious. I'm going to bring in attorney Joe Krowski. He practices in Massachusetts, a fierce trial attorney he is, and knows all about this case. Joe, good morning to you. Let me start first with your reaction to the bombshells that were dropped on Tuesday.
So look, it was a day filled with bombshells, and I think if you look at the body language of Judge Cannone, that was just the climactic moment of what was a long day. There was information or allegations of violations of a protective order. Attorney Brennan had brought up the long and tortured history of witness harassment in this case, and that was kind of the climactic moment. This is going to, I feel like history keeps repeating itself, and we keep talking about how important and how critical and consequential the next hearing's going to be. There are certainly some stormy skies that the defense has to navigate. But having said that, Judge Cannone, despite all the criticism she has received, doesn't want bad things to happen to people. She wants a fair trial, and I think she overall is pragmatic and wants this trial to proceed. I think there's a lot of damage control the defense has to do, and they can come at it two ways, right? They can come at it scorched earth, or kind of a mea culpa and try to prevaricate and explain away some of the problems that were brought up. But if you remember, the motion wasn't to exclude defense counsel or vacate the pro hac vice. It was really to exclude ARCA because there was a history of frustration with this ARCA presenting themselves under the guise of being independent witnesses that were limited in what they could disclose and discuss because they had that contract with the federal government. So bottom line, I think the trial goes forward, but what by all accounts has been the preeminent witness for the defense, ARCA, comes in badly dinged and damaged.
Interesting prediction, Joe. Tell me, backing up a little bit just to the hearing next week, what do you expect to happen in that courtroom? How do you think Judge Cannone is going to run this hearing, and what exactly do you think we'll see?
So there's a lot at stake, and I think she did the right thing. She hit the pause button. She wanted, in fairness to the defense, because there had been a lot of information brought forward, information that wasn't part of the motion. It was a series of emails that the defense had actually provided to the government, I think, a week before that. And because of the concerns it raised, she wanted to hit the pause button and let them go over it and decide what kind of response that they are going to have. So I think she's going to take the measured approach. Look, I heard the arguments. I watched the hearing. The problem for the defense is going to be there's some explaining they can probably do and parse this out, but the email from March 2024 between the defense and ARCA, Daniel Wolf, doesn't really line up with the presentation made to the court during the voir dire in June of 2024. And remember, Judge Cannone expressed some reservation and concern about the true autonomy of ARCA back at that voir dire hearing. She was skeptical when she asked the defense attorneys that you really want to call 3 witnesses that you aren't allowed to talk to? And the response was that they were allowed to talk to them, but only to really coordinate. So I want to be measured like she wants to be measured because as a lawyer, I don't want anything bad to happen to other lawyers, but certainly on its face, there's been a prima facie showing that the court was misled.
Right, Joe. And this is so serious. If Judge Cannone, as you know, if she finds that there was a fraud perpetrated on the court, she's got an obligation to report that. I mean, this is really bad. Worst case scenario, when lawyers take an oath to act with integrity and honesty as officers of the court, and if they carry out a fraud on the court, what is the worst thing that could potentially happen to them?
Well, the worst thing that could happen to any lawyer is in Massachusetts, we have the BBO, the Board of Bar Overseers, and you would be referred to the Board of Bar Overseers, and they would do a preliminary hearing, and then ultimately you would have a due process hearing. And then if there was a violation of any of the rules of professional responsibility found, you could be sanctioned. And the sanction could be from a private censure to a public reprimand, all the way to suspension or disbarment. But that is something that would take place after the trial. And look, I don't wish that on anyone. So it's going to be interesting to see what the timeline is and whether or not there's a valid explanation. Certainly, they skirted really close to the edge based on the information that I've been able to review and I've been able to take in from the hearing. But again, I think this judge wants this trial to proceed April 1st. This trial has been practiced in that court, and it's a logistical nightmare to accommodate that trial. I think there'll be a collective sigh of relief once this trial is over.
I think you're right. Joe Krowski, thank you so much for all of the insight and analysis. We'll look forward to having you back on the program very soon. Coming up next, we're talking about who Robert Baker is. We know he's a co-defendant in the case against Monica Cementilli, but did you know he's also a former porn star? Oh yeah, and a registered sex offender. We'll talk about it next.
When you go into a trial, you try to eliminate surprises.
Did he ever use the N-word?
Yes, he did.
That was a surprise.
The goal was to get him to lie. Have you used that word?
Not that I recall, no.
Anywhere that he was involved was tarnished.
I was heard uttering the N-word 40 times. How do you pull that back? You don't.
Trial and Error. Why did O.J. win? A Court TV original series. New episode Sunday night, 8 Eastern and Pacific. Only on Court TV.
She spent the entire month after her husband of 20 years was slaughtered in their backyard, either with her lover, Robert Baker, or, as you heard, sending him naked photographs of herself or close-up photos of her intimate body parts.
Well, let's talk more about Monica Cementilli and her co-defendant and lover, Robert Baker. When's this guy going to take the stand? This is going to be epic when he does. So he pleaded no contest. He's serving a life sentence. He claims Monica was not involved. Prosecutors believe that the two hatched this murderous plot to try to collect on Fabio's life insurance policy worth over $1 million. Lots of talk about Robert Baker, but who is he really? Let's take a listen.
Did you still suspect that the defendant and Baker had some form of relationship?
I believe I did.
They began kissing and making out in front of the establishment.
Was he part of the Racquetball League?
Yeah, he was the guy that orchestrated, kept it organized, did the schedules, and told us what court to play in. And
you also described him as having some kind of sexuality, masculinity when you talked about what you observed of him.
Yes, he did. He was very muscular, and he was wearing the shorts, and yeah.
Okay, and so Robert Baker, heard a little bit about him, but we want to tell you a little more. Did you know that he is a child predator? He assaulted his stepdaughter, who was under the age of 14. He's a registered sex offender because of that crime. He also was a porn star. He appeared in nearly 80 adult movies during the span of his career in the late 90s. Did you know that? And you heard that he's a racquetball coach, too. And he pleaded and serving life for doing a murder, so he's also a killer. Add that to his resume. Quite a guy Robert Baker is. How's the jury going to receive his testimony? Let's bring in our guest, attorney Michael J. Brown and private investigator Manuel Gomez. Michael, what do you think about Mr. Baker? You think the jury's going to like him?
Well, obviously they're not, Julie. I mean, he's going to be a horrible witness. My question is, why would the prosecution call Baker when they have Austin? Austin's the actual culprit, apparently, who has cooperated, flipped, and has his deal. I would, and again, I'm not going to second guess them, but I'm not involved as intricately as they are. But my strategy would be call Austin, let Austin testify, and then let the defense call Baker, and then you have the opportunity to cross-examine him. Now, as the prosecutor, you call Baker, he becomes your witness, and it's going to be more difficult to cross-examine him. You really can't impeach your own witness, so it's problematic for them, I believe.
Great points, Michael. Thank you, Manuel. What are your thoughts on this guy as an investigator? You know, you've seen everything in your career. I hope you write a book someday. What do you think about this guy? Sizing him up. What are your thoughts on Mr. Baker?
Well, Mr. Baker, you know, to me is the perfect mate for the Black Widow. Monica is like the Black Widow spider, the one who kills her mate. She's the mastermind of his execution, okay? And the evidence is so overwhelming. There's 2 points here that the defense team can't even get by. Point number one, Monica told Robert Baker when her husband was going to be alone in the house. That was the day of the murder. Point number two, Monica told Robert Baker through forensic evidence that how to access the surveillance security system. So to me, this is a done deal. Well, like my colleague said, putting Robert Baker on first was problematic. They should have put down Christopher Austin because he already made a plea.
Right. You know, and it's not too late, so maybe they will. Maybe, right? You know, maybe they will. Let's say if they do, let's explore that, because you're both right. He should be the guy the state calls first. What do you do then if you're the state? Do you not call Mr. Baker? What do you think, Michael?
Yeah, I wouldn't call Baker. With the limited knowledge I have, I would call Austin. Austin has his deal. He'll talk about who conspired with him, who paid him, what they told him to do, and I'm sure he's going to implicate Simontelli in that. And then I think the defense would probably fall into the trap, and they'll call Baker. And it's not just a trap, but that's really the only alternative they have. They'll call Baker. Baker would get up there and say, Mike, the defendant had nothing to do with it. And the prosecution can absolutely tee off on him on cross-examination, bringing in everything and anything. And remember, they'll argue to the jury in the summation that that was their witness. That's who they wanted you to believe. And there's absolutely no credibility in anything he said. And as a result, it really takes away from anything the defense said during the course of the trial.
Yes, Michael, I think you're exactly right. I think this is the way this is going to go down, that it's going to be the defense that calls Mr. Baker. Manuel, do you think that, let's assume they hear from Mr. Austin, called by the state, hear how this whole thing went down. Do you think that there's any shot of them believing him, even if he says, oh, my love, Monica wasn't involved in this?
I do believe they'll believe him, even though they will be problematic because he did make a deal for 16 years. And they're going to say, well, maybe his statement is tainted. But like I said to you before, the evidence in this case is so overwhelming forensically, showing that she is the mastermind. She is the Black Widow who planned the execution of her husband. There is no doubt about it. So, you know, Christopher's statement is going to nail it and solidify it. I think Robert Baker is going to be a wild card in this case.
Yeah, great points you're both making. Do you think that the state is going to be able to prove this case in the end, Michael J. Brown?
I do. I think the evidence is pretty overwhelming. And again, I think that the only thing that the defense is going to be able to do is call Baker. And I think that's going to probably be their downfall.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. Maybe today will be the day that they call one of these guys. We're going to buckle up for that this afternoon when it begins in Los Angeles. I've got to say goodbye and a big thank you to you both, Michael J. Brown, Manuel Gomez. Thank you so much for the great analysis. We'll see you back here very soon. When we come back, it's time for Court TV Live. That's all for opening statements. My friends, if you like the show, you can watch it again. You can share it. We put the episodes up on CourtTV.com for you every day. Just click on the shows tab there.